week with my feelings. I was in my feelings for like 2 seconds. I just can't take myself too seriously for too long. So here we are. You are listening to the Good Girl Podcast, a podcast that is redefining what it means to be good through uncomfortable truths. And I call those uncomfortable truths confessions. So every week we have someone on sharing a confession about themselves. The goal is to produce healing, freedom, and authenticity. And I am the host. Again, my name is Cameo King. That is the name my mama gave me. A lot of people ask me, but that is my name. Excited about this week's confession. If you haven't already, make sure you are following us on Instagram and you have liked us on Facebook. I think if you hadn't heard from last week, we were nominated. The Good Girl Podcast was nominated as Detroit's favorite podcast. I don't know what song that come from, but we were nominated as Detroit's best podcast through the Detroit Choice Awards for 2021. And in order for us to make it to the next round, which will be the top 3, we need you to vote. So if you are following us on Instagram, you can just click that link in the bio. Boom, you'll see it right at the top, and you just vote for us. You can vote for us multiple times a day, multiple times an hour, multiple times a minute until we get to that place. And thank you all for your support up until this point. So before we hop into this week's confession, here's a word from our sponsors. The Ingham County Health Department wants to make sure you are connected and aware of any and all updates on COVID-19. You are encouraged to head to hd.ingham.org for more information on testing sites, vaccine updates, and COVID-19 vaccine distribution. You can also email coronavirus@ingham.org or call 517-887-4517. Again, that email address, coronavirus@ingham.org. or call 517-887-4517. As always, if you're ever looking to get your business, your event, your organization to my listeners, my loyal listeners, on Detroit's favorite podcast or nominated for Detroit's favorite podcast, just hit me up. You can slide into my DMs. You can shoot me an email, or you can just head to our website. And we have a media kit available that tells you all about us, all about our listeners, all about our reach, how many people be listening to us. So check that out. And as always, let's listen first to whom the confession is coming from.
It's so hard for me to ask for help.
This is Alesia Galati.
Last night I was trying to get my shirt off. And of course I'm in pain. I'm like, ow. And my husband's like, I'm right here. I can help you.
Even though she doesn't like asking for help, help is what she does. She runs a full-service podcast management company out of North Carolina.
My clients drop the audio in a Google folder, and then we do the editing, the marketing, the strategy, all that fun stuff, show notes. And when I say I've always had this dream, like I've been wanting to run my own business for years, but like always felt tied to that day jobs where it was like, you would be crazy to leave this, you know?
But Alesia did leave. And in her words, she got kicked from her corporate job.
And realizing I do not like this job. I don't like what I'm doing. I feel like I don't know what I'm doing half the time. And then in March of 2020, I got let go for the first time in my life and was like, what?
She says after she was let go, it left her in a place of discontentment. She admitted, though, she never liked the idea of a job dictating her time and money.
But the summer was hard, but it also wasn't. Like I look back, now I'm completely swamped with client work, which is a blessing. But I look back at the summer and the days that I spent outside with my kids when I would have been in an office working or inside working on my business. We were able to go on trips. We were able, not, safe trips with, everything going on in the world right now. And being able to really just connect with my family on a deeper level than that I feel really great about.
So now she's focused on living her life in a meaningful way, contributing to society.
Now being able to support local women and have them on my team and teach them skills that they can take wherever and that they can do from wherever, it's so fulfilling.
All right, so that's a little bit about Alesia, and I'm really excited for her confession. I think you guys should listen with an open heart. Listen with an open heart and an open mind. And I think you may even see some fragments, some pieces of potentially some organizations, some institutions you have been a part of. So listen. All right, here we go. So, Alicia, excited for this conversation. Welcome to the Good Girl Podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am so thrilled and excited to chat with you. It's going to be great.
I am too, because I love how we initially connected. For you guys that's listening, Alicia, she really she loved y'all before she knew y'all. Because she said, I want to make sure that this is appropriate for your audience. And I'm just like, hey, we welcome all types of confessions. And honestly, I think it's perfect. I'm just gonna let you share before I start to digest and unpack, but I'm excited. So let's get to the meat of it. Alicia, so if you could, as always, I ask all my guests, what is your confession?
I grew up in a cult, and it was a fundamentalist Christian group that turned cult pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You have lots of questions, I'm sure.
I know. I'm like, so I think, so I'll say this. When people hear cult, they initially think you drank the Kool-Aid.
Yep, Jonestown, yep.
Yep. You guys are living on a farm somewhere in the Midwest, in the middle of West Bumba, with just one house. That's but then it's 50 people who all dress the same.
Yep.
And it's one man. Like, I feel like that is what people think about. And maybe a cow there too. I don't know. But
yeah,
that's what people think about. How would you describe a cult?
So I classify a cult as really any organization or group of people who typically have differing beliefs than the rest of society. And usually they follow one leader. That leader usually has all authority. Their word is final on anything and everything. And people are, there's other things, obviously, like people are sleep deprived, or they are made to eat certain things, or to live together in a certain way, or to live a certain way. And so when I describe cult in that way, a lot of people are like, well, yeah, that sounds like Jonestown. That sounds like, the Tony Alamo Foundation, and like all these other places that are like really creepy with one old guy who's usually, with all the ladies. You know what I mean? But if you think about it, it also could classify Abraham from the Bible. It could also classify Jesus Christ. It could classify the Catholic Church, Scientology, like a lot of these, Mormonism, the major religions of even today started off as cults. Now, what's the difference? What I define as the difference is that religions have simply stood the test of time. So we're at the point now where Scientology is pretty close to being a religion because it's been around for so long and it's become a standard religion.
So with you saying that, Alicia, it reminds me of this quote that I saw. It said, the difference between a religion and a cult is that in a religion, your savior dies for you. In a cult, you are asked to die for your savior. Do you believe that applies, or that summarizes the difference?
I would say no. There's so much more intricacy to it, to cults, that is. So I have a hobby podcast where I talk about cults with my sister, and having grown up in one, we come at it from that approach of like, we grew up in this. Yeah, I just don't know that I agree 100% that is the like defining line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talk about your experience. You said you grew up in a cult. Talk about, what was your entry into the cult? You said it was a Christian, I'm going to use the word church, and it turned very quickly into the cult. So take us on a journey.
When I was growing up, my mom struggled with drug addiction for a very, very, very long time. And it actually took her life 2 years ago. And so she always wanted to try to get help. And so she joined a church when I want to say about 3 or 4. And so I always grew up with like very fundamentalist Christian values instilled. And then when I was 11, after, back and forth with drugs, she joined this women's program. And it, it was very much like you described, one house, 50 people all living in it, in the middle of nowhere, New Jersey. And, there were other houses and stuff, but like the kids are all homeschooled. You go to church, 4 times a week, prayer meetings, fasting, the works. And what was supposed to be an 18-month program to get your life together turned into 10 years.
Wow.
So how did that happen? A lot of
Yes.
people are like, well, how in the world did that happen?
Why didn't y'all leave on the 19th month?
Right, exactly. They're teaching, and I find this to be pretty standard with fundamentalist Christianity. And it brings me back to your quote of what you said, because like God is love, right? Growing up, I was always taught that God is love, that Jesus died and it was for love. But then you also have this God of the Old Testament that is very violent and is very demanding of like Abraham sacrificing his child and like all of these like mass murder and genocide of other groups. And that's the God that a lot of the fundamentalist Christian groups and like Calvinism and things like that, they really focus on that terrible, to use the word as in the Bible as well as in,
Yep.
modern language,
I get it. Yeah.
that terrible God. And so that's why when you said that it is the God that dies for you, that's why I don't know that that's really the difference.
Yeah.
But what they taught was that you are incapable of making your own decisions and that you need authority, the leadership of this group, to help you make those decisions. That's cult tactic 101. You know what I mean? And there are churches like this all over the place, right? Where they say, if you go to another church, you're going to hell because they don't preach like we preach. They don't teach like we teach. And we're the only ones who know the truth. So as soon as someone says we're the only ones who know the truth,
Ding, ding, ding.
like, and you can't find that out for yourself because you are incapable of making these decisions and you are incapable of staying clean and protecting your children, then you tie people into, well, I'm a bad mom if I leave. I'm just going to backslide. I'm just going to fall off. And then 18 months turns into 10 years.
There is so much to unpack here. And just it's so interesting the things that you are sharing on your journey, that these are very much phrases that are connected to the churches that a lot of us love and abide by and go to. I have several friends who are Christians who have had this same experience. They eventually, like after they healed from it, they look back and realize how much of a cult it was. But even in the smallest things, because the one thing you talk about is incapable of making your own decisions. So a leader per se wouldn't come out directly and say it, but it's implied.
Yeah.
And if I'm honest with you, that's something I've been talking about with my friends. That's why I'm so excited about this conversation. Talking about this with my friends, how a lot of times we're told, and it kind of places us at war with ourselves.
Yeah. That
whatever decision we're going to make, it's not the best decision. It's not a good decision. And any decision that comes out of you, it's not right, versus let's cultivate you making great decisions for yourself, or let's cultivate you trusting your spirit. Let's cultivate your connection with something higher than you. There's different type of language. So when you say cult, and it like some of these descriptions or descriptors that you're giving for your experience are very much present in a lot of our places of worship And I don't think we view it that way, especially when you're ousted from a community because you didn't follow said rules, or you're othered, and not othered in the way that, and then sometimes you're like physically othered, but othered in a way where if you go to a different church, then I'm not going to be friends with you. Or if you marry outside the church, or if you date outside the church. And we're not talking about God, we're talking about church.
Yeah.
You know, and so these things come up.
Yeah.
And so, Alicia, I'm interested in how you began to digest that, I guess, as a kid, because you were a kid as you were going through this process and you saw the turn, but I'm assuming that you accepted this as normal. Like this is just how we are. This is just how the world works.
Yeah. So having already had that very fundamentalist upbringing, these rules weren't new to me at all, because the one church that I went to growing up was the exact same way. They ended up at one point, and I don't think I've ever shared this, like literally ever, but I remember at one point they told, because they had a private school attached, and my mom never wanted us to like go to public school, so we always went to this private school, and they told her that she had to give up custody of us because of her lifestyle to someone in the church in order for us to continue going to the school. And she did.
Wow.
And so, and like even when she went to this group, like she went first and then we joined her a little later, it was like, you can't take your kids. That's a bad, like, no, that's the wrong place. No, you're just going to fall again. No, it's going to be terrible. When I was there, it wasn't even really about the rules, because I was used to that stuff. I was used to being told what to wear. I was used to being told what to do, how to act, and blah, 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 all that stuff. I was just happy that we were together, especially having gone through the traumatic childhood of like, mom always giving money away to people who I don't know, and we don't have food, and like all these struggles of like, I need new shoes, and where's the money, and we need food. like having to deal with all of that stuff. This place was better. We were together. We were with our mom. We had what we needed. We always had clothes. We always had, food. We always had these things that we didn't have to worry about. And so it almost puts you in this comfortable position as well of like, well, it doesn't really matter if this isn't normal because we're fine. And it wasn't, and I praised this place all through high school. Stood before pulpits of thousands of people to express the great wonders of what this place did for us and my family. And that doesn't negate that.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I said, I want to go to a regular college. God forbid, right? That I was told that I would never be able to see my family again if I did that. Wow. That I would never be allowed home to that place.
Ousting.
That I would go to hell because I would be tempted. And so I was like, oh, wait a minute. No, this is not so good. This is not so great. This is not okay. This is not normal. And I want to live my life. Like, I'm about to be an adult. Let me live my life. I'm not the drug addict here. Why am I being punished for this, And so that's when I realized, oh, this isn't good.
I don't know if you have the answer to this, but do you believe initially that this cult, that this church turned cult, that their intentions were initially pure, and somehow, some way, power, selfishness, greed, perverted it?
I think 100% it started off good. Now, it was running for about 10 years before we joined. And I think what changed is that the success rate. Now, when you're dealing with addicts, there's more needed to really help them. And mental health is not something that the church talks about a lot, or at least hadn't in the past, of like getting diagnosed with bipolar disease and getting your mental health issues taken care of and speaking to a licensed psychiatrist and a licensed therapist, where instead you're talking to the director who I don't think had any certifications of anything whatsoever, was not ordained or any of that stuff. But you're sitting in therapy classes with her, or sitting, one-on-one doing counseling sessions. And, she's just she's just reading back the Bible to you rather than really digging deep into those issues and why they're there. It was more about like, well, you just have pride. You need to get over it. It's like, well, that doesn't help me if I'm addicted to drugs, you know? And so there wasn't a good success rate. And so I think what shifted is that they were like, how do we keep people from going out to make bad decisions? Because then we look good because we're doing good for people, right?
And also what I find interesting is, in a sense, I'll call it the juxtaposition between this institution served me really well at this place in my life, but then you almost hit a brick wall, or you have an experience where they don't serve you the same, or where it's so traumatic, and it just doesn't line up with this idea you have of them. And I think that's where a lot of us begin to explore, or even cause an identity crisis within ourselves, because we have this, and I don't know if that was your experience, because we have this image that these people are literally God, that this institution is God, this thing that has, like, we've idolized it, and when I say for right reasons, because the environment, in a sense, caused us to idolize it. It didn't cause us to necessarily answer to something bigger than man, it didn't cause us, and I know for you, it didn't cause us to answer to the universe. For me, it didn't cause me to answer to God. It caused me to answer to an institution, to a person, to a thing.
Yeah.
And it causes this almost identity crisis. Like, what is going on? What have I been doing my whole life? Is this real? Is life real? So did you have that experience?
100%. I like to describe it this way. I remember when I finally left and moved in with my now husband, and just navigating life outside of that, having never really been taught how to interact with people, because in there you were always kind of taught that anyone outside of the church is evil and has evil intent and wants to do terrible things to you. And so trying to navigate normal work relationships with that in the back of your head is terrifying, especially working with a lot of dudes. Like, you're always taught like they just want to have sex with you. That's it. It's like, not really. Okay, let's get over ourselves a little bit here.
Listen, I was gonna say, like, I feel like 90% of them do, though, but
maybe, but with a working environment. Okay, we're not going for drinks afterwards. Let's keep it PG and safe, right? But like really having to navigate that, or like when I had a coworker who was a Christian, and he said, "Hey, I have a friend who wanted me to invite you to an introductory yoga class." And I was like my first thought was, "Oh no, that's satanic. I can't go to that." And then I was like, "But is it? Or is that just something I've been taught my whole life?" And so like really navigating, like having to, one, literally drop all of my beliefs and everything that I was. And I think there's that pendulum swing, right? When you're pinned up to this side, and then you're let go because you don't know what to do, where to land, or anything like that. And you swing to the other side and you make some really bad decisions, and you're almost the other extreme of who you even want to be, just to try it. And we see this a lot in like teens who rebel, and young adults who finally go off to college after their parents have controlled their lives, and all that fun stuff, right? And so you finally kind of land in the middle, which is your normal. That's what the life that you want to live. But really having to like say, okay, are these my thoughts? Is this something that I even believe in? And is this true to me? And then having to really determine that for myself, as not just as a whole, but as things came up.
It's so interesting. My next question was, do you still see some of the like fundamentalist views showing up in your life in ways maybe that benefit you, but also in ways you're like, why am I still dealing with this? Like, why is this still a thought?
Yes. Yeah, I think I do. There are definitely times where I have, man, it was just like last week I had a thought and I was like, where did that come from? That is not me. Like, okay, we're not, and it was in a conversation with my kid. And so really just trying to figure out, like, I guess thinking to myself first before I have these conversations with my kids of, these are the beliefs of the world and I want them to understand them, and I want them to study them and then make decisions, educated decisions for themselves without, things being forced on them as they were with me, really just being able to, yes, instill those values of being a good human being, treating other people with respect, treating other people the way you want to be treated. Still have that respect for authority, but also know that the respect goes two ways. Growing up, it wasn't like that. It was, it could be generationally, like, no, you're backhanded, you talk back, whereas I encourage my kid, as much as I hate it, I encourage him to ask why we're doing things, and what are we doing, and, ask those questions and not just take things at face value,
On your journey, because, and I'm asking this, the question I'm going to ask, because I think a lot of us, if someone is listening, I'll say this, because I think a lot of us have been a part on some level or another level. And I know we're talking about the church, but I think this type of cult-like behavior, and you talked about this earlier, also exists in organizations that we work with,
Yeah.
also exist in, our, corporate businesses, or even I'm thinking about online communities, and they develop these mantras. And if you go
Yeah.
against this mantra, or what one person like, it's very cult like. And I
Yeah.
and as I begin to think about this, just very much how social media has segmented people based on what they like, talk about, comment on social media. And so you think this is your world,
Yep.
but it's really not. It's a piece of sand for the entire beach
Yeah.
that we have these beliefs and these values. And so at what point did you realize that you were in a healthy place to
Mm.
begin to make a healthy place outside of this cult behavior, or a healthy place, at least within you? Because I think about the identity crisis, we just talked
Mhm.
about. I think about having to step outside of a community you knew your whole life. Like, I'm sure you had friends,
Yeah.
you had anyone on the block, growing up for me was your cousin. So you had cousins, you had all these things, but instantly, it's gone. So with that trauma and trying to get to a healthy place, and also understanding that healthy or healing is, it's a journey. It's not like you're not just healed. How did you know that you were maybe over this hump, or you got to a certain place where you can function well?
Mm. So I think that, hmm. So the
Or are you
first,
at that place? That's
yeah,
that.
I think that I'm always doing something that is on a deeper level. But after I had my first child, I had really bad postpartum depression. And that also, I feel, pushed me a lot quicker to really do that self-development and work on my mental health and work through those things, to where, when, I want to say, maybe about 3 years ago, I was finally able to say, I know who I am. I know what my core values are. Sure, the other ones kind of shift and move as I learn new things about myself and learn new things about the world around me. But those core deep values are pretty standard for me. And so, like, I know who I am, I know what my beliefs are, and I'm finally able to really move forward and kind of filter things through those core values that I now hold true. So I've been out for 8 years. So it took about 5 to really let that pendulum swing and also rediscover who I am, and really do that work to know, okay, I'm capable of making decisions, and I'm capable. I mean, We just talked this year. I had an identity crisis with losing my job. So I think it's always shifting and you're always learning. But I really felt at peace with myself about 3 years ago.
And what did that work look like for you? Like, was it therapy? Was it just constantly asking yourself these questions about what do you want? What do you believe? Why?
So it was a lot of talking to other people about their beliefs and how they viewed the world, people who didn't have the same experiences that I did, but also tying that into people who did grow up with me in that cult. And I'm still connected to a lot of them, and seeing what they were discovering in their journeys outside, and seeing how maybe things were shifting for them, and also seeing people that grew up there and continued with the church and continued to have that relationship with God and do things that way, and then looking at what their life turned out to be, and really just kind of observing, but also doing a lot of like that inner work of journaling, meditation, thinking through, okay, when things do come up, how do I handle this? How am I going to handle this? But yeah, it was a lot of discussing and journaling and inner work
Mhm.
for sure.
Did you realize that there were times when you were triggered and you didn't know? Because typically, triggers come up when we don't expect them. Like, triggers are triggers for a reason because we don't know that they exist.
It's like, whoa, where'd that come from, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, and this is a funny one. I still get triggered by it. It's so ridiculous. Anytime someone will start singing a song that at my age I should know. Nope. Y'all don't know. I did not grow up listening to anything but hymns and like super duper Christian music, because it was at the point where they were very fundamentalist. Like, I know I can't think of his name. That black rapper who's a Christian.
He has this line, "I don't do it for the money, except when I do it for the money." What's his name? Why do I know that one line, right?
Right.
It's so funny to me.
Yeah.
It's a couple, and he was Lecrae. Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah. So
Okay.
Lecrae was too worldly to listen to because he's rapping. That's of the world. We don't listen to that. You only listen to hymns and like the super Jesus people, like Salem, those kinds of people. Like Jeremy Camp even is too rock for Christian music. Like, no, that's the wrong kind of Christian music. And so when people are like, oh, but you don't know the Beatles, or you don't, no, I don't know any of that stuff. Like, nope.
Yeah. And
Sorry.
even as you're sharing this, like, I'm just thinking about how this parallels with a lot of folks' experiences, and even some things that I experienced as well. That it was frowned upon if you listened to what's called like worldly music or secular music.
Even if it has the Christian label on it, it's too worldly, or it has too much of a beat, or it makes you shake your booty too many times. Like anything like that. It was, and so anytime that they would play music in the office and they'd be like, oh, Alicia, you know this song, right? And I'm like, guys, we've been over this. I grew up in a cult. I'm not doing this every day. Like, no, I don't know this song. And my husband will still say things like, oh, you know this song, right? Or you saw this movie, right? And I'm like, listen, we've been together a long time. You should know better.
You should know by now. How did you and your mom discuss this? She saw this as a way out. I'm curious as if she still views it the same, or if maybe she has a special place, like it served its purpose. Like, what is the conversation like between you and your mom about this experience? And is your mom still with the church?
So my mom passed in early 2019 to a drug overdose.
Sorry
and so yeah, I wish I could have had these conversations with her, because that was one of the reasons that we started the podcast, my sister and I. It was to really navigate this without her and without being able to have these conversations with her. Because I know that she was doing a lot of like self-development work and did view it as a cult. And she had been out for a few years. And so she was like she was going to like Reiki things and like exploring her spirituality, and she was into like oracle cards and like really just trying to connect with anything that she felt was higher than herself. And I think that had a lot to do with her mental health illness. Like she was diagnosed bipolar and had a drug addiction. And so like there's a lot of like deep depression that weighed on her, and a lot of like, and I think she did have a lot of regrets, from the few conversations that we did, because typically it was like, no, we're not talking about the camp. We're not talking about the camp. No, let's not go there. Whereas now it's like every week we're talking about the camp, because we weren't ready, I don't think either. Like I have people who literally, I have been in the online space with them and side hustle businesses for 5 years, and they didn't know till this year that I grew up in a cult. Because it was not something I wanted to talk about. I didn't want to have to rehash it. I didn't want to have to deal with the issues or deal with like why I react to things the way I do, or why I'm so like gung-ho about self-development. Yeah, I had postpartum depression. That's why. That's what I would always push it on. When really there was just so many deeper things that were happening in my heart that I didn't really want to have to explain all that. And so really being able to like come out this year about what happened and my experience. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that it's no longer there. So the camp did shut down. They didn't get funding anymore, and so they closed about 4 years ago.
Are you pissed at the camp? Like you have animosity? I'm pissed, but I don't even know. I'm pissed. I don't even know.
So I have a lot of anger for sure around. I don't blame them for my mom's overdose because she made her choices, but I do hold them at fault. Like if they had helped her to feel capable of making decisions, maybe she would not have turned back. I also didn't, and you can cut this out if you want, I also didn't have some very good words with the director when my mom did overdose. The next morning, she texted me. She said, "Your mom and I didn't always agree, but I loved her." And I'm like, I don't know what that means. You can just get off my phone. Goodbye. Like, don't call me the day after my mom dies. Like, that's not okay. And then to come at it from that perspective of like, we didn't agree, and I know she was on drugs, and I know I don't agree with her lifestyle, but I loved her. No. No.
You didn't.
No, get out of here with that. No. And so I do have a lot of anger around that. But I also recognize that my mom made her own decisions, So I think it's this kind of combination.
And I just want to say again, Alesia, like, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry you had this experience. I'm sorry your mother had this experience, and that you're, going through the grieving process. It's an up and down roller coaster.
Yeah.
And knowing what we know now about your experience with this community, do you, and if you do, how have you reconciled your faith?
So I think that there are some things that I was able to pull from Christianity that felt good, like the Jesus of the New Testament, and I still continued when I lived in New Jersey. Before we moved down south, I still continued to go to church. It was a different church. It wasn't as fundamentalist as the other one, where I still felt connected. I still felt like I could talk the lingo, I could do the things, and I didn't feel like I would be pushed out.
Did you feel free? And I'm asking, did you feel free? Because when you say you can talk the lingo, so it's like you knew how to show up as a Christian, but did you feel free?
Yeah, I think I did. I felt like I could finally maybe figure out who I am, and what my beliefs are. And in moving down to North Carolina, and also in losing my mom, I think that really, it pushed me a little further than the Christianity core beliefs and things like that. Being like really looking at is there a God? What happens after you die? What, really exploring all those things and what my beliefs are around those, and then coming to terms with that. Like, that's like the only way I can really explain it, of like really being able to navigate that stuff. So that was kind of the journey away from Christianity as like a religion, but still being able to hold those values, like love your neighbor, do good things, pay for the person behind you in the drive-through, like do things that light up the world and make the world a better place. So
I hear this often, and I feel like I can say this because I'm a Christian, and I can come for Christians because I'm a Christian. I don't know if I can. I don't know, because they may come back for me. But but I hear this often, and it's unfortunate, but that there are non-Christians who are more Christian-like than Christians. Really holding to those values and expressing and illustrating those values. But I also want to throw in there, like, we're all on a journey. We all need healing, and it manifests and it shows up in different ways. And we're also very much all a part of this system that sometimes we don't realize that we're a product of of a perverted system, of a broken system. And we're really just acting out what we know to be true and what we believe to be true. But I think the path that you've shared with us is really a path of exploration, in making sure that we know within our hearts, within our spirit, within our soul, that up until whatever point, that it's true and it's something that you can really stand on. And I say up until whatever point, because I was having a conversation, I think last week, and the kind of theme was like, I don't know anything. Like, we both were believers, but it was like, all I know is Jesus Christ is Lord, but everything else, like, I don't know. Like, even questioning like text, even questioning like that this could be true in this moment today, right now, but tomorrow ask me again, I may have an experience, or I may meet someone who's had an experience, and it kind of shakes that belief a little bit and makes you want to go deeper.
Yeah.
So I just think about the whole process of evolving as humans and trying to connect to something that's bigger than us and outside of us. Because at the end of the day, it's like, this just makes me put it like, we're spirit wrapped up in flesh. I don't know if we think about it that way, and I don't know if you think about it that way, Alesia. But at the end of the day, like, my body is decaying and going away, but there's something outside of that.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And it makes me think, as you were talking, I was thinking about like, and I've said this on my podcast, that the scriptures were written by white men for white men. That is it. And so to take it, yes, you want to take certain parts as the inspired word of God, but to take the whole entirety, having been retranslated and shifted and pushed around, like historically, like I went to Bible college. I know about the history of like how the Bible was written and why it was written and who canonized it and who decided what was going to stay. I know all that stuff. Like, I'm not like, oh, I know, I just went to church. No, I studied this stuff for 3 years after high school. Yes, I did go to the Bible college. I did not go to regular college. If anybody's wondering. And so, like, looking at that, it was canonized by white men for white men. Women were viewed as lesser than then, just about as much as they are now. Yes, we're making progress. But like if you look at the writing of Paul, he was a misogynistic, mean person. He was not nice. He treated people with disrespect, and yet his writing is canonized as like the inspired word of God. So really just taking the parts that, like you said, it is a journey. It is this, like, some things might resonate with you today, whereas other things are like, whoa, okay, nope, that's not, nope, that is not hitting right today. So really being able to really decide for yourself, what does that look like?
Yeah. And at least I think we could go for days, but even like the shift in how you view the Bible, that these are stories of people who had experiences with God. I think oftentimes we create deities out of like Paul. We create deities out of Matthew. Like we create deities out of these people as though they can do no wrong, or that if they have the final say and the only experience with God. And I find that problematic in terms of how we approach scripture versus this is one man who walked with the Christ, and this was his written experience. It's a different approach when you say the author versus, but like we can go deep. We can go.
Yeah, I'm like, your audience can't see, but I'm nodding my head like crazy. Yes, 100%. I mean, my sister and I are always talking about this. Like, if you look at Solomon, like he was the one who wrote what an ideal woman should be. That dude, you don't know anything about Solomon. He had thousands of concubines. Like, come on. Like, he didn't know what a good woman was or how to treat a good woman. Are you kidding? Yet he's the one who says, she is quiet. She is adorned with the jewels of her household. She is, barefoot and pregnant. He didn't say that, but you get the point.
I do. And I think I mentioned this. I think I mentioned this book before that I'm reading. It's, for me, at least, it's heavy because the author provides so much information, like on one page, and so many biblical references. And I'm the type of person like, no, I got to make sure that's what that verse say. Like I have to go back and read it, and read it context, all that other stuff. So the book is heavy, but it's called Unprotected Text. And I mentioned this before on my podcast, but it explores sex in the Bible, and the fact that there are varying perspectives, but we hang our hat on one. And so when you talk about the thousands of concubines, when you talk about Paul, who in one verse said it's better to be single than it is to marry, but then you have, the church holding up marriage. So what is it? And then in marriage is the only place that you can have sex. And then you have the story of Naomi and Ruth, and Ruth being at the feet of Boaz, and what does feet really mean? Just all these things. So we could go deep if you guys want a theological podcast question.
Yes.
But Alesia, I thank you for deciding to share, deciding to be transparent, and sharing very just deep and layered and complex parts of your life with me. I think it is beneficial. Like it is beneficial for me, and also those listening, in terms of just beginning to ask questions so we can live this life the best way we can and as authentically as we can. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you for having me. I had a good time. Like you said, we could go for hours, girl.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Good Girl Podcast.